But I wanted to ask about polygyny. And I say polygyny because there's polygamy, polyamory, but polygyny is a man having more than one wife. And this was done by people like Solomon and David, some of the best of the best. This was done by, and for myself, I don't know where the Bible says that it's sinful to do that, Old or New Testament, or maybe I overlooked something. Check it out.
What's up, everyone? This is Lisa Fields, the founder and president of the Jude 3 Project. And if you've been tuning into the Jude 3 Project, you know we just did a series, Why Don't I Go? And you know that in that series, questions were asked that we didn't answer because we wanted to listen. But now we're back with our Q&A edition. And I brought two friends along to help me answer some of those questions. Flame, AKA Marcus Gray, also Marcus Garvey. We have The Truth, aka Emmanuel Lambert. I don't have a civil rights hero for him. But we also have our panelists back, Jason, Crystal, and Vince. I'm so excited to have you all here. And we're going to answer some more questions for this fourth episode. So, Jason, what do you got for us this week?
Man, I hope y'all ready for this one. Let me start with a disclaimer, though. Okay. The disclaimer is I understand that the Bible doesn't say that it's acceptable to just like sleep around or nothing like that. I get all of that. But I wanted to ask about polygyny. And I say polygyny because there's polygamy, polyamory, but polygyny is a man having more than one wife. And this was done by people like Solomon and David, some of the best of the best. This was done by, and for myself, I don't know where the Bible says that it's sinful to do that, Old or New Testament, or maybe I overlooked something. So I want to know,
It's always a man's question.
Yeah, I want to know from y'all your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I'll let the men take a stab at that first.
I mean, it's so much to be said about this. One, let me just ask you, why?
That's good.
Okay. For me,
I want more than one.
Yeah, you know why? I don't know. I'm trying to find a way to say it that's kind of like soothing to the ears.
No, not here. Don't do that here.
I mean, I can't. So basically, basically.
Okay, I get it. So one, it seems to be right a male appetite in the scriptures from some of the big homies in the scriptures, the Hall of Famers. But what seems to follow, though, on a practical level, and we can get to the theology of it, the Bible answer of it, but one of the things you'll always see is trouble follows. Disruption, lack of peace, jealousy among the women participants. So it doesn't seem to be a course that leads to the perceived happiness. You know what I mean? So I can see on the face of it, it seems like a fantasy for the male conscious, right? Even in the Islamic construct, the suicide bombers are rewarded with 6 virgins if they, do what they have to do. But again, that's from the male construct, right? So on the face of it, I think I get it. Solomon had 700 wives, 300 concubines.
We know that. He said, I don't know nothing else in the Bible.
Correction, 300
I don't even know what's that 300 side pieces. I don't know what concubines is. But even his conclusion was, it's all vanity. Right? So he, as the king, having access to women all across the known world, still his conclusion is there's an emptiness there. It didn't bring what I imagined as he explored and found interest in all these different looks and different, biological physiology. He still like ended at the place of, I need something else. You know what I mean? But I do understand some of the argument. People have practical reasons for some of that. But I would just say theologically, when Paul talks about pastors being, having one wife, right, as the leader of the church in terms of their role, it seems that the model is that the leader should follow in that, one spouse for the other partner. That seems to be a reflection of Jesus's bride. So Jesus, right, calls us his bride, and we're one body. So it's just this oneness that seems to be the theological idea from God's mind. Does he allow other things? Of course he does, because he's a God who sort of lets the story play out. But when I look at his intentionality, it seems to always be oneness, and it seems to be the place where most settled and peaceful rest is found in that relationship, construct.
So you would say based on like how the Bible frames everything, your best and most efficient path to peace is being with one woman.
It seems to be principally what's screaming out of the text. I don't think you can really go and find in a multiplicity of areas in the Bible where a man with multiple wives, was the most satisfied in his relationship and walk with God. It seems to be very turbulent, a lot of disruption in the household, in the culture, in the kingdom. It was always sort of chaotic and never seemed to reflect, the joy of the marital institution that God had in mind in a creation order. You feel me? So,
can you put it under Romans, under disputable matters, though?
Perhaps, right? Because it is a sense in which, the way you frame the question, the Bible doesn't say explicitly that, this is a sin, right? So I think you can have fun and debate it out. Right. But if you're just looking for what's obvious, you probably will walk away with, what was mentioned.
Context.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add before?
You had something to add?
So I would say, because when we see sometimes in the Old Testament, we see two things. We see descriptive and prescriptive. And so when you see Solomon and David having multiple wives, that's describing what happens, but that's not prescriptive that we should duplicate those things. So like case in point, David murdered someone. He raped Bathsheba. Just because it's described doesn't mean it's prescribed. And so we can't look at the Old Testament and say, well, they did in the Old Testament. It's just describing what happened because the Bible is full of different genres. So sometimes it's telling a story, sometimes it's giving instructions, sometimes it's poetry. So I think looking at that context, not looking all the time at the text and say, he had multiple wives, so God is okay with it, then that would lead us down a rabbit hole of other things that we don't want to emulate. And so navigating what's descriptive and prescriptive is key in thinking through the text as well.
Yeah, that's excellent. To add to that, just because the Bible records it doesn't mean that he endorses it. Yeah, and I think that's critical too. And that's to Lisa's point. And I would just add that appealing to Jesus is always something that kind of helps us to establish foundation for many things, right? We come back to him as the final authority on all things pertaining to this life and the one that is to come. And when you look at the discourse or the dialogue between Jesus and the disciples concerning marriage and divorce, in Matthew 19 it says, and he answered, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh," to Flame's point. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. And so I think that what Jesus is doing is, number one, Jesus is appealing to the Old Testament. But what he's appealing to, he's not appealing to the life of David or the life of Solomon. What he's appealing to is God's ideal from the beginning, because everything that precedes Genesis 3, which is the fall of man, will be the ideal of God. What was it that God intended from the beginning? You see what I mean? What that helps us to do is establish a groundwork. It helps us to establish a foundation, and that's what Jesus seems to appeal to. He could have very well appealed to one of the other patriarchs. Instead, he appealed to God's ideal. Remember back when God, he said, have you not read when when God the Father said that the two become one and that whatever he has joined together? You see what I mean? And so I think that having an understanding of, asking the question, first, God, what is your ideal? And searching for that to establish foundation is critical to having these kind of conversations that can get murky and gray. So.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. And I'm so thankful that y'all tuned in for episode 4 of Why Don't I Go Q&A edition. Remember to come back next week for episode 5. You don't want to miss it. And thank you. Grace and peace. God bless.
If I can expand it just a little bit, I feel like in general, I guess in terms of the American Christian context, I think we've really dropped the ball in dealing with homosexuality, lesbianism, and all forms of those lifestyles. We've been very insensitive, quick to bash, and not really as quick to understand and get in the weeds of a person's experience and sort of feel that out. So I think that's why there's been so much hiding.